All right, we're going to try to finish up this lesson. Again, like there's more to 1-3, but at least this first part of 1-3 we're going to do right now. So, yeah. Let's go right to an example. Remember the last thing we talked about yesterday? What was that word? It was a crazy word. Why is that looking like that? Uh-oh. Why is it doing that? Oh, weird stuff. Let me see if I change this. Oh, that's it. I had the caps lock on. Okay, good. Whew. I was wondering what I did to this. Nisia, what'd you say? Conjugate, right. Conjugate was the last thing we did yesterday. Now we're gonna use the conjugate to simplify some things. So here's some examples. This is example 4. Example 4. So write it down. 1 over 3 plus 4i. And they say write this in standard form. Do you remember what standard form is? Nah, that's the quadratic equation. Standard form when you have an I, when you have a complex number. The standard form of a complex number, a plus bi, very good. So what we want to do is we want to take this, make it look like this. You're like, well, it already looks like that. There's the a, there's the bi. But no, it's not, because it's what? It's in the denominator, right? We want this, so it's not in the denominator. Everybody got it? So what do we do? Very good. So we multiply by its conjugate, top and bottom, okay? So what is the conjugate of 3 plus 4i? It's very simple. 3 what? Minus 4i. That's it. That's how you do the conjugate. Conjugate, you just change the sign in the middle. That's it. Change the sign in the middle. They might start you off with a minus, then what would you turn it into? A plus, right? If they start off with a plus, you turn it into a minus. That's the conjugate. But you don't just multiply the bottom by it, you also do what? Multiply the top by it as well. Why do we do that? Is it the rule that says whatever we do to one side, we do to the other side? Is that the rule that we're applying here? No. Why do we multiply it? And I've made it in yellow so it stands out a little bit. What did we multiply this fraction by? A 1. We can multiply anything by a 1. It doesn't change the value of it at all, does it? Okay? So that's why we're allowed to do that. I always like to talk about that. All right, let's do the bottom. Now, I'm going to multiply this and this together. If you noticed yesterday when we multiplied by the conjugate, the outside and the inside add up to 0. So really all we're doing is just multiplying the first and the what? And the last. So let's do that. Let's multiply the first. 3 times 3, 9. Now, positive times negative is going to give you negative. And now let's multiply the last. 4 times 4, which is 16, and I times I, which is I squared. Now, the more you do these, you might be able to go right from this to what the finished answer is in your head. And I'd be okay with that if you can do it. But I'm showing you all the steps right now, okay, since we're kind of new at it. Now, what about the top? I'm going to multiply the top together too. Well, that's easy. That's 1 times 3 minus 4i, which gives you just 3 minus 4i. We're not finished. We've got to do a couple things here. Let's do the bottom. 9 minus. Now, let's look at this. Remember what we said yesterday that I squared is equal to? It's negative 1. So let's do a little bit in our head here. It's going to be negative 16 times what? Negative 1. What's negative 16 times negative 1? Positive 16. Everybody see that? So there'll come a point where you start doing these enough where you should be able to go right from this to this, okay? And kind of skip that middle step right there. I'd be fine if you're able to do that because you know the I squared is going to go to negative. That changes this sign, and now you just add those two numbers together. And again, I'm just showing you every single step right now. And what do we get? Yeah, when you multiply by conjugate. Yep, when you multiply by conjugate, it's always going to be this. Different numbers, obviously, but, you know, it's going to be the same idea. So what's on top? 3 minus 4i. What's on the bottom? 9 plus 16? It's 25. Now, some books are fine if you left it like that, but really that's not, I don't know, to tell you the truth, I don't think they would be fine with that now that I think about it, because it's not really in standard form. The A, the real part, is not just sitting there by itself, is it? and the imaginary part's not sitting there by itself. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to kind of separate these. So this is 3 over 25, and it's also negative 4i over 25. Everybody see that? Okay, both of these things are being divided by 25. So I'm going to go 3 over 25 minus what? 4 over 25. And then what I normally do, you could put the I up on top, but usually I'll put it right out in front because that's the way the standard form's written, with that I kind of out there by itself. So this is right here. This is the best way to write your answer in standard form. It's standard form. It's just we have fractions now, right? What is my A? What if I ask for the A? What is that? Come on, everybody look. It's not hard. What's the A? Come on. It's A plus BI. What's the A? It's 3 over 25, right? That whole thing is the A. What's the B? 4 over 25. That's right, okay? So the A is the real part. It's 3 over 25. The B, 4 over 25i, that's the imaginary part, okay? But that's your B right there. Does that make sense? Okay, so that whole fraction is the A, that whole fraction is the B. All right, let's do another one. They ramp up the complexity just a little bit, but it's the same idea of what we've done. Example 5. Again, I'm not going to write standard form. We already said that, but that's what the problem says. Write this in standard form. They're going to give you a couple to do. So here's the first one. 5 minus 12i. There you go. So we have to write this in standard form. Our first step is exactly the same as what we did on the last one. So actually, I'm going to get rid of that equal sign. It kind of gets in the way. Let's change it back to yellow. Okay. What do you think I'm going to do? Multiply by the conjugate, and that is flipping the signs. Okay? So I multiply the bottom by 5 plus 12i. Can't just do it to the bottom. Talk to me. Same thing to the top. That's right. Why do we do that? Because we're multiplying by a 1. All right? So we're allowed to do that, right? I can multiply anything by a 1. It's not going to change the value of it. So now, let's multiply the bottom. Oops. There we go. Make this back into white. It's pretty easy to multiply by the conjugate, all right? Because I don't have to worry about the outside and inside. Now the top one, I'm going to have to worry about the outside and inside because they're not conjugates of each other. But these are conjugates of each other, so all I got to do is multiply the first ones and then multiply the last ones. So let's do it. Is everybody thinking? You're not just letting me do all the work, right? Okay, you should be thinking ahead. Okay, as soon as you see me writing this down, you should be thinking, or even writing it down, okay, if you want. So what's this? 5 times 5? 25. What's my sign going to be? Which one? Plus or minus? It's negative times positive. What's a negative times a positive? It's negative. It's always going to be negative because when you multiply the conjugate, they're going to be different signs, right? So different signs is always negative. So when you multiply by the conjugate, this middle one's always going to be negative, right? Okay. Now, let's multiply the last together. 12 times 12 is 144. Now, if you want, you could put I squared here, right? Because I times I is I squared. But what do we do with an I squared? I squared is always equal to what? Negative 1. So what is that? What does this negative 1 do to this negative right here? It makes it positive. Can you do that much in your head or not? No? You're not ready for that? Okay. If you're not ready for that, let's show every step then. Okay. But some of you are. Some of you are ready to do that. All right? So you feel free to do that. Now this one, it's a little bit more difficult than the last one. The last one was super easy because it was just 1 times that, right? So I hardly have to do any math at all for that. But this one, I got to do a little bit of math. So I'm going to have to do some FOIL. That's exactly right. All right? Now, remember, they're not conjugates of each other, so I don't just do the first and the last. I got to do the whole entire FOIL thing. First, outside, inside, last. So let's do the first. 1 times 5, 5. And then 1 times 12i. It's plus 12i. Okay? The inside, plus what? 20i. Everybody see where we got to 20? Because it's 4 times 5. All right? And then plus 4 times 12 is 48. I times I is I squared. And let's make that a little bit longer. Now we got to simplify this stuff. So let's do it. Let's do the top first. Or the bottom. I don't know. Let's do the bottom. Bottom's a little easier. So what do I get here? Now can we do this in our head? What's that I squared going to be? It's going to be negative, right? What's that make that? Makes it a plus, right? So it's 25 plus 144. Everybody see that? Because I don't need a whole new step just to make this a negative 1, do I? All right, so I can do that in my head, and there I go. What about the top? I got a 5. Do I have any other just like regular plain numbers? No. So I got a 5. Let's add these two together because they're like terms because they both have an I in it. So what's 12i plus 20i? 32i. What about this one? It would be negative 48. That's right. Why negative 48? That looks like a plus to me. Well, I squared is negative 1. So that makes this a negative 48. Agreed? You following along? Okay. Let's simplify some stuff. What can we simplify on this one? The 5 and the negative 48. What's that going to give us? Negative 43. I always put the real part first, okay? Always put the I at the end. All right? And then I can't do anything to this I right here, so I just keep it plus 32i. We good? What about the bottom? What can I do there? Just add them up. What's that? 169? Okay. We're almost done, but not quite. Because we need to put it in standard form. That's not really standard form. I need to split them up, just like I did that other one. All right, so if I split this up, I take these two, so it's negative 43 over 169, okay? And then I put a plus, because of this plus right here, and then I write this. What is that? 32 over 169. And then what do I put on the end? The I, because of that. Do any of these reduce? Does anything go into 43 and 169? Nah. 2 doesn't. 3 doesn't, right? 7 doesn't. No, nothing goes into it. Same thing with these two. Nothing goes into both of those. Always look to see if it does, though, because you should always reduce your fractions. And that's your answer right there. Now it's in standard form. We didn't really solve for anything, right? We didn't solve for x. All we did was change this original problem, this original fraction, into standard form. And you might be looking at this, you're like, it looked a lot nicer before than it did now. Now it looks ugly. But it's in standard form. Why is it in standard form now? Because we have a real and we have a what? Imaginary. Nope, it's not a fake number. It's an imaginary number. All right. What do you think? Yeah, we got 5 minutes. I got a couple things we need to talk about. We are not going to divide now. But I do want to show you this. You ready? So I to the first is just equal to I. Do you agree? It's easy. All right, let's do a few of these. Actually, we're going to do 4 of them. I squared. What's I squared? It's negative 1, isn't it? Okay. What's I cubed and what's I to the 4th? I tell you what, let's do I to the 4th first.
Is this a trick question?
It's not a trick question. Okay, but there's a little trick to it. Okay, but it's not a trick question. I to the 4th. What's I to the 4th? Isn't that the same as I squared times I squared? Yeah? It's negative 2. That's right. It's positive 1. Do you see that? Because I squared is negative 1. I squared is negative 1. Multiply negative 1 times negative 1. That's a positive 1. So I to the 4th is positive 1. Okay? You with me on that? Yeah. So that's kind of an easy one. I to the 4th is always nice. That's a really nice one that we can use practically. Same thing with I squared. I cube's probably the hardest of these to remember. But let's break down I cubed. If I break down I cubed, isn't that the same thing as just I squared times I? Exactly right. Because what's I squared? It's negative 1. Negative 1I, just write it like this, just negative I. So I cubed is just negative I. What happens when we go to what happens if I go to I to the 5th?
Would that be negative I? Positive I?
It'd be positive I. Because what's I to the 5th? Isn't that the same as I to the 4th times I? What's I to the 4th? It's just a 1. What's 1 times I? It's just I. Do you see what's happening here? It's a pattern. Exactly right. There's a pattern. Let's do another one. I to the 6th. What's I to the 6th? Let's do it in our head. It's I to the 4th times I squared, right? So it's negative 1. Because I to the 4th is just a 1. I squared is negative 1. Let's write it down. I'm seeing blank looks. I to the 4th times I squared is I to the 6th. That's supposed to be a 6. That looks ugly, but that's a 6. All right, so what's I to the 4th? It's just a 1. What could I really do with it? I could just mark it off, right? It's just a 1. What's I squared? It's negative 1. So I to the 6th is negative 1. Do you see a pattern developing? Yeah. What's I to the 7th? Again, what I would do, I would pull out an I to the 4th. So what's I to the 7th? It's I to the 4th times what? I cubed. Yeah? I to the 4th is just a 1. So I to the 7th is the same thing as I to the 3rd, or I cubed. What did we say I cubed was? It's negative I. You with me? I to the 8th, what's I to the 8th? It's I to the 4th times I to the 4th, which is a 1. Do you see it repeating? Okay, do you see that repeating thing right there? That's really important. To me, I think I to the 4th is one of the most important ones. If you can bring out an I to the 4th or an I to the 8th, or really I to any power or any multiple of 4, right? So what if I had I to the 20th? What's I to the 20th? It'd be a 1, because 20 is a multiple of 4, isn't it? Would you agree? 20 is a multiple of 4. So basically, it's like I to the 4th 5 times, which is just a 1. But what if you had this? Watch this. What if you had I to the 21st? Here's what I would do. Watch what I would do. I would go I to the 20th times what? Just I. What's I to the 20th? It's just a 1. So what's I to the 21st? It's just I. Okay, here's your problems. It's page 116, 117. And it's 9 to 45 odds. 9 to 45 odds. That's your homework. Section 1-3. I think this is our first one, so it's A. It's right there. It's right in front of you. It's right on the board. Why would you say what pages? I just wrote it down. Oh, my word. All right. Have a good weekend.